Well, thank you. Thank you so much for being here. Such a pleasure and an honor to be here with you today, and I'm very much looking forward to the conversation. Thanks to the members of the European Parliament, the Fisc Committee in particular, and European Commission, DG TaxOd, our two parents. We were created thanks to a preparatory action of the European Parliament 4 years ago, and a call for proposal by the European Commission. And 4 years after this, I think I'm very proud of the work that we've been doing at the EU Tax Observatory, doing research on multinational companies, on tax evasion, on high net worth individuals with some policy impact already. So thanks a lot for making that possible. Thanks for your commitment to research in the European Union. I think it's extremely important, perhaps more important than ever, to reaffirm this strong commitment for facts-based analysis of taxation. Of course, an inherently political question, but to have an informed political and democratic debate is extremely important to have independent research that can establish the facts, the causes and the effects, and based on that research to try to formulate policies, not because it's for economists to say how policies should be made. It's not for anyone to say. It's for the public to decide through democratic deliberation and the vote, but to have the most informed democratic discussion possible. This research is extremely important. So thanks a lot for making that possible. We've assembled today, I think, a program that covers what is, in our view, the key issues of the day. We'll start with taxing about tax competition and multinational taxation. We've been witnessing over the last years and decades, really, an acceleration in tax competition and more and more absurd forms of tax competition. Absurd in the sense that some tax competition and some forms of international competition in general can be good, can be positive sum for the world. But when countries compete on tiny corporate tax rates of 10, 15, 5%, it's totally negative sum for the world as a whole. The main and the only beneficiaries of that process are the owners of multinational companies, who are shareholders, who tend to be at the top of the income distribution, and everybody else loses out. And that's pretty much where we are today. And there was a very ambitious attempt with minimum tax on multinational companies, Pillar 2, to start to stop this tax competition and put a floor to how low tax rates can go. And we'll discuss in the first panel what's the prospect in particular for that going forward. Second very important issue is what are we doing with high net worth individuals? So there's been an emerging body of work. We had a conference at the Paris School of Economics last month, bringing together the international research community on this issue, showing that everywhere the super rich have much lower effective tax rates than the rest of the population. What do we do about that? We've tried to put some proposals on the table. Let me emphasize that the minimum tax, the 2% minimum tax on centimillionaires, that we worked on with Brazil last year at the G20. I wrote a report last June to detail that idea. It's a very modest proposal. It's just the idea that if you're extremely rich, 100 million euros or more, you shouldn't be allowed to pay less tax than your secretary or than middle class or working class people more broadly. And the most powerful tool to make sure this doesn't happen is by having a binding floor, a minimum tax rate, expressed as a fraction of wealth, because wealth is harder to manipulate than income. So second panel will discuss the prospect for that, the need, in our view, for such a floor, and the prospect of this happening. And third very important topic is, of course, tax evasion in the third panel. Tax evasion is one of those areas where we've made real progress. Sometimes progress happens, and sometimes, even if we live in this world of negative sum forms of international competition, competition always coexists with coordination and sometimes coercion. And even in this period where competition has prevailed, we've made some progress in fostering new forms of international coordination, which are very important. The common reporting standard, the automatic exchange of bank information has been a landmark achievement. And it's important because it shows that tax competition, tax evasion are not laws of nature, they are policy choices. And sometimes we can get together and create new forms of cooperation, which doesn't mean that we've solved all the problems of tax evasion, to be sure. And so the third panel will discuss the progress that's been made and everything that remains to be done. So thank you so much for being here. Thanks to the wonderful team of the EU Tax Observatory, and I look forward to the conversation today. Thanks again.